Amanda Foo-Ryland, thank you very much for joining me today and welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here with you.
Amanda, you're an award-winning TEDx speaker and a best-selling author. But for those that don't know you, can you walk me through at least a few chapters of your life and introduce yourself to the audience? I know the short period of time we have during this podcast is not going to be enough to picture all the stories and get to know you in very detail. However, maybe the best picks from your end would be really good to hear and
Yeah,
shed some light into you as an individual.
yeah, really happy to do that. I've always been fascinated in, or should I say, with human beings. It's something that I love being around people. I love connecting and chatting with people. And I've had the fortunate experience of working with the Estée Lauder Corporation for 16 years. It's a cosmetic company. It's probably the number one in the world still. And during my 16 years there, I spent 14 of them in management. So in the training department, actually teaching people, training people, helping them to serve people better. And naturally, I became really interested in neurology and how we do, what causes people to behave in a way that gives them results they don't want, and what causes people to behave in a way that gives them results they do want. So when I left the Lauder organization, I took a deep dive into looking at why we do what we do. And I studied three different modalities. I studied neurolinguistic programming, something called timeline therapy, and then I did a doctorate in clinical hypnotherapy because that was the area I found most fascinating. And really, with a blend of those three modalities, I built a business that now has around 32 of us working within the business, helping people on a daily basis to create unthinkable change in their life. And I also train other people to do the same thing. So I'm an author of two books. One of them is just about to be republished and launched in September. And my other book came out in November of last year and became an international #1 bestseller very quickly, which was exciting. And I'm a speaker. So I travel. I was in the UK last week speaking. This year I've been in the US, Tokyo, New Zealand, and the UK speaking internationally to groups of people, or even for TV channels. Actually, I was in Dallas recently on Amazon Prime Speak Up, which is their version of a TEDx. So in many respects, probably the easiest way to describe me is I'm passionate about what I do, and that's helping people to live their very best life, which sounds very cliche. It's been regurgitated lots of times. But in many respects, we approach it differently. And that is that people tend to think change takes a long time, that it's costly, that perhaps it's not even for them, that it's not even possible for them. And what we can do with what we call neural coding is help people to make changes really quickly that last for a long time. So that's my passion. I'm also a mum. I've got 4-year-old twin boys. I became a mum at the age of 52. I hasten to add, I didn't carry them. My beautiful wife, who's 14 years younger than me, she carried them and birthed them. So yeah, pretty old mum coming in at 52 with twins, but it's an absolute joy. Every single day is an adventure with these two. Yeah, and I live in Portugal mainly, spending a little bit of time down in New Zealand, and the rest of the time just enjoy following my passion and being with my family.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for this really short and interesting introduction. Altering minds. People are battling on a daily basis, implementing positive habits in their life. How do you actually alter your mind, or how can you develop a habit, a positive habit that can help you achieve your things, whether it would be professionally or in your private life, anything at all? Are there any tips you can share perhaps in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's something I talk about in the book that's just about to come out in September. In many respects, it's about repetition. What happens is a person decides, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to start exercising every day, or start meditating every day, or journaling. And so what they do is they say, right, I'm going to start that tomorrow. And they do, they might do it for 2 or 3 days, and then life will get in the way, and they'll come up with an excuse, and then they have to redecide to create that habit again. So there's an argument with oneself on a daily basis of, should I be doing this or shouldn't I? Or, I can't because it's raining. I can't go running because it's raining outside. I'm going to get wet, and I don't want my new trainers to get wet. So there's this narrative that goes on. So my first takeoff point would be, just decide once. Make the decision, and that's it, it's done. And now you've got to do the stuff. Nike, when they launched their Nike app back in 2011, I did some research. And what Nike said was that if somebody logs onto their website 5 times, they become a user of the app, or logging the steps or logging the runs or whatever workout people are doing. That's probably the shortest amount of repetition that would be needed to install. There is research that says it's around 62 times of repeating a habit, not necessarily on a daily basis, but certainly a timely basis, that then the habit becomes installed into the neurology, or should we say, into the unconscious mind. So that once it's been installed in the unconscious mind, it runs habitually. And I can give you an example of what that might look like. I decided not to drink coffee anymore, that I was going to stop drinking coffee. And therefore, what I was doing was I was moving away from a habit I didn't want anymore. And generally, that's what people do, is they're not wanting to start running. They're wanting to move away from a pain point. So it could be, I'm putting on weight, or I don't want to be, as a female, I don't want to have bad bone density. I don't want to have weak joints. Therefore, I'll do something different. So in many respects, people are what we call away motivated. They are motivated to move away from the pain, and therefore they want to install something that's going to allow them to do that. Well, this is quite clever, because by wanting to stop drinking coffee, I decided to start drinking green tea. So in many respects, I've installed a habit of drinking green tea and deleted the coffee addiction, because it replaces it. However, so that with all this knowledge of habit installation, I still found myself going to my coffee shop. I've been running around the lake with my friend in New Zealand, in Queenstown, New Zealand. I'd go to the coffee shop, which we did every time we went for a run, and I put in our order, 2 flat whites, please. And then suddenly remembered, oh, no, I'm drinking green tea. So it still ran automatically, even though I had decided once that I wasn't going to be drinking coffee. So that's how well ingrained habits are. And that's all they are. They're just habits. It's just a neural network that's set up that when I see this or do this, I then do that. And all we need to do is disconnect that neural network, replace it with something that better serves, and basically do that on repetition. So that's how the habit installation happens. And I think most people give up because they think, oh, I've done it for a week, I'm not seeing any results, or I've done it for a week, I don't feel any better. And then they tend to default back to their old habits. But the newest research I've just seen, as I said, is 62 to 64 times of repetition before that habit becomes installed at an unconscious level. And just to give your listeners an idea of what that might feel like, I wonder if they can play along with me. If you're driving, you're not going to be able to do this, but or you might want to pull over. But just take it, if you've got coffee or whatever you've got in your hand, just pop it down so your hands are free. And now just fold your arms, right? It's easy. Everyone would have just been able to fold their arms very, very easily. But now unfold your arms and give them a bit of a shake, and fold them the opposite way around. Now that's much trickier, because when I ask you to fold your arms the first time, you've got a programming for how you fold your arms. It happens automatically. You do not need to think about it. That's just like ordering coffee, 2 flat whites, when I know I'm drinking green tea. When I ask you to fold them the other way around, we've got to get the conscious mind involved. So that's not habitual. Now we've got to think about it. And this is what it's like when we're creating new habits. We've got to be consciously mindful to make that decision carry in order for it to eventually become unconscious. And it's really that simple. But I think the advice is, decide once and stick to it. and then you'll turn around one day and it will just be a habit.
Okay, got it. Thank you for sharing. But what if someone replaces a bad habit with a bad habit? So let's say a smoker quits smoking, but then starts eating sweets to replace that urge of having a cigarette, which is in a way, negative. It's good that you stopped smoking because it's probably got worse impact on your body and health in general. But sugar is bad in general. But what if someone replaces a bad habit with a bad habit? So 62 times, 62 to 64 times to replace a habit. So you have to be disciplined to keep that momentum going. But
I think with knowledge of how habits are installed, if a person is going to stop smoking, then my recommendation would be very mindful about what you're going to replace that with. So rather than it be, I mean, let's face it now, to smoke, it's quite difficult. I used to smoke years ago. And back in the day when you could smoke in the office in London, it was kind of actively encouraged. Everyone was smoking inside the office. It's unthinkable now. But people have to make an effort to smoke. They have to walk somewhere. They have to go off site. They have to find a smoking area. So it takes a certain level of commitment, and therefore, rather than slide into replacing it by eating cookies or, as you said, sweets, is to be really mindful about what they're replacing that with. And if the person's like, well, I just want to still feel good and I really enjoy these particular sweets, is say, well, I'm only going to do that for a week. And then I'm going to default to something that's going to better serve me. I think that would be it's being very mindful and not clumsy around what we're going to replace that with, because something like smoking will need replacing. There'll be a thought that comes up that, oh, I really want a cigarette, so let's do something different. It might be I'm going to do 10 press ups, or it might be I'm going to, hop onto a podcast for 10 minutes and listen to something inspiring, or it might be I'm going to go for a walk and listen to a podcast. It could be replaced with other things that are going to give that person far more value.
okay, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned your book. If someone wanted to step into your head, get to know you better, understand the process of kicking habits, maybe introducing good habits, what can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so the book that's coming out in September is called Neural Coding, a surprisingly simple guide to unthinkable change. And in there, I actually take the reader on a journey of how I've used these tools in my own life. So it's not, even though the title sounds quite sciencey, it's actually not. It's more of a let's look at how these tools work really practically. And there are a couple of tools in there that I've developed, and both of them are award winning. So essentially, what happened was a company in the US that wanted a solution to help people with obesity change their habits to being able to make better choices chose our solution out of 1,600 other solutions. And it's a surprisingly simple, basically an A4 piece of paper that allows you to have it installed. And I think the fact that they selected it for something as serious as morbid obesity means that if you're wanting to install a new habit, then it's a really simple tool to be able to do that. And I've used it myself and still continue to use it myself because it's a great feedback in terms of this is happening on a daily basis and I'm drinking my green tea, to eventually it becomes unconscious. So the book has a whole chapter developed to the actions that we do every day will actually be who we become. And I think there's a lovely quote by a lady called Anne Dillon that said that it's actually the days that how we live our days is how we live our lives, is a quote. How we live our days is how we live our lives. And there's a tendency to think that life's out there, it hasn't quite happened yet, and we're getting ready for it, or today doesn't count. But today and today's decisions count. It's that 1%. Let's just change 1% today, because if we change 1% today, when we've lived to 86, then we'll be enormously better as an individual. Rather than, I think a lot of people want a quick fix, like you said. People want to get rich overnight and have that financial freedom and independence, and actually, I think that happens to very few people. So what the book does is it allows us to have a little bit of a reality check, and if you want to learn how neural coding can help change your life, I walk you through real life examples and then introduce you to the tool. And then the reader can go online and I become their virtual coach. So everything's pre recorded in a studio in London. And I go in there, they join me, and I do the process virtually with them. Obviously, it's all pre-recorded because they're processors, but yeah, it's a slightly different approach of reading a self-help or personal development book, because I become the reader's guide throughout the journey.
Okay, fantastic. Definitely going to buy it. When is it out? What date?
It's out. Well, I'm literally just signing off the next proof, the last proof. So it's probably going to be around the 12th of September. Not long
Not
to
long
go.
to go.
No, not very long.
Fantastic. Okay, talking about habits. What is one habit you developed throughout your life that had a positive impact on you? Can you share it with us, maybe?
Yeah, I'm a runner. I love to run, and I've run a lot. I've run a lot of marathons. I ran across Portugal from the Spanish border to the most western part of Portugal. In fact, the most western part of Europe, um, which was a marathon a day in 7 days. So I ran 7 marathons back to back every day, and I just fell in love with it. My dad used to run. I started running when I was about 13 and found it a really lovely way to spend time with my dad, who's sadly no longer with us. But through him inspiring me, I started doing half marathons and then marathons, um, and continue to love it. I'm not as competitive now. I tend to just do it because it allows me to think. And I also find it's really difficult to go running and think negatively. You can only really think positively because of the endorphins all flying around your system. So I find it a great way to problem solve, just think things through, come up with creative ideas. It's like my meditation, really. I call it running meditation. So that's a habit I've had for life, which I'm very grateful for. That's really helped me enormously. And in fact, interestingly, Matt, if I don't run, I really miss it. I can get a little bit grumpy if I've missed my run.
All right, that's a good habit, altering your mind to do some exercise. I think exercising and reading are probably the best two habits you can develop in your life.
Yeah.
Knowledge and health. But what about when you look at today's time and compare it maybe to your time when you are younger? What do you think are the challenges younger generations are facing right now, and how do you think people or the society, what could they do to change it or help younger people? As you know, we're facing a lot of different roller coasters in life. People are about being depressed, not being recognized in the community, feeling lonely, a lot of different aspects, and it's growing on a daily basis. Let's put it that way,
Mhm.
that we mentally weaker probably today than people were back in the days. So, what would you say? What can be done, and what challenges the younger generation facing in particular that it could be
I think,
threatening for?
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's definitely increased with anxiety is one thing that we've seen increase. As I say, we've got 32 of us working globally, and we've got in the UK, we've got our kids and teens coach, a lady called Rebecca Cousins, and what she said is she cannot believe the increased amount of clients that she's having coming to her that are as young as 5 that have got anxiety. I mean, it's unheard of. A 5-year-old shouldn't even know what that word means. And yet, it's really since the pandemic, people being locked in up in the house, and whilst they probably, for the majority of people, would have enjoyed that family time and enjoyed the time with the parents and the siblings, this going back to school is a massive pressure point for them. So I think that's one factor that's increased the anxiety, and you use the word depression. that as well. I think social media as well. There's so much comparison to them to oneself through what they're seeing on social media. I mean, it's scary, and therefore, what do you do? And my sister, who helps families with teenagers, with young people, is to have an honesty policy around the phones and allow them so much screen time. But then at night time, when they go to bed, the phones are being charged in a central area in the house where the parents have discussed that, I am going to take a look at your phone and just make sure that you are safe. So it's a narrative that probably needs to emerge as the child's growing into into teenage years. And my sister definitely does that with her. She's got a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. Finley's the eldest at 16 and Erin at 13. And yeah, they're on social media. They're doing the TikTok. They're doing all the things that the kids do. But they're really happy to leave those phones to be charged. And so Rebecca and Richard, her husband, can just take a glance and see what's going on. And a couple of times, Erin has been picked on. She's popular, she's athletic, she's completely oblivious to how beautiful she is. She's not remotely Instagram influenced. And she's been picked on, and it's been picked up by my sister and brother-in-law monitoring the phone. So I think that's one thing that parents can do, but it would probably need to be at an early age. I can't imagine it worked very well if you said to your 17-year-old, I need to start monitoring your phone. It would come across really badly. But I think if it's installed as they start to get a device, that I'm the gatekeeper over this, then and it's done honestly, then it will become very amicable, I think. So that's another key factor where it's the child's not left on their own, because there is a lot of online bullying, and and some of it's completely nameless. We don't even know who the person is that's bullying an individual, which leads a lot to more of it, I think. I think the other difficulty is that there is this get rich quick, become an entrepreneur. I think the difficulty for them is that when I was at school, I wanted to be a vet. I was very clear that's what I wanted to be. I was told when I was 11 I wasn't clever enough or intelligent enough, and that I should think about maybe being a PE teacher instead, because I wouldn't get the grades to go to university. So clearly that teacher was not necessarily the right way of handling it, I have to say, because that installed a limiting belief that I'm stupid. However, I think it was very clear back then. You became a teacher, or you became, if you were intelligent, you might become a lawyer or a doctor or a vet or a dentist. Now it's much, much more uncertain. And I think if you're a child that's got fantastic support, and you've been raised with this kind of go get it mentality, I think the world's your oyster. I think you could create anything. However, if you're a child that feels threatened by not knowing and feels a little bit lost, then it's a minefield, because we can talk about roles now that won't exist in 2 years' time, and in 2 years' time there'll be roles that we haven't even thought of. So I think it's so diverse now, which is a fantastic opportunity, but equally, I think, also very scary. And I think that's the difficulty for young people.
Okay. So, following up on this, then, what career advice would you give younger people? Do you think education is very important to achieve goals? Obviously, we can't foresee the future, and in a lot of families, education is a top priority. But do you think it prepares younger people, especially in those times, to be ready, not only being equipped with the knowledge, but also being equipped of how to handle life, especially in current situations, as you said before, anxiety levels are skyrocketing and everything else. What's your thought on this?
Well, having two little boys that are 4, and we live in Portugal, Sarah and I, my wife Sarah and I, have had lots of discussions about what does education mean to us. And interestingly, we both had a very similar experience at school. Sarah was very academic, so that's the point of difference. I wasn't. She was very academic and an A-star student. And then she got snapped up and started playing cricket for England for 12 years. So the education system served her in her sporting career. But what she said the education system didn't teach her was social skills, was how to think differently. It was just very regimented. My education at school, I loved it. I loved school. I was, sporty, arty, really enjoyed being around people. I became head girl. So one would think that I'd had this, academic success. I was not academic at all. It took me 3 times to get my maths O level as it was then. I didn't get into university to do PE, thank God. At the time, I was devastated, but I'm now very grateful I didn't get in. And I actually did my education later. And my advice to young people around career is if you can find what you're really passionate about and you absolutely love it, then focus on that. Because if whatever that is, you're able to study and you're able to further your knowledge and passion for that thing, it's going to be far easier than going to university and studying something you have no passion for, which is, I think, why a lot of people drop out because the excitement of the university soon sort of wears off, and now I've got another 3 years to study this subject I'm not even interested in. And it was Richard Branson that said, find something you're really passionate about, make sure it helps people, and if those two things exist, you will make a success of it and it will make you money. And I think that's the difference is let's find something that you really, really care about, that you're passionate about, and explore that. What is that? And what are the opportunities within that? As opposed to doing something just to get a degree to prove to an employer that you are stickable. There are many other ways to, I think, to prove to people that you are committed and you've got tenacity and that you're passionate about what it is that you do. So for Sarah and I, around the education piece, we're far more interested in our boys growing up with life skills than rather than education. And I can give you an example of what I mean. There's the international school down the road from where we live. We could have sent them to the international school. We decided not to do that. We've sent them to a full immersion Portuguese school where only Portuguese children go. And consequently, we'll end up with 2 little boys that understand the culture, have Portuguese friends, and are fluent in Portuguese pretty soon. What a fantastic gift to give your children. So, as an English person growing up in England, you don't learn a second language really. We're lazy. Sarah's the same. We studied French for a little bit, but that was it. So I think to give our little boys this opportunity to learn this language, they may not live here as grown men, they may decide to live somewhere else, but even to have that programming in their brain that they are bilingual and experience a different culture was the reason for our choice. It wasn't primary education and stats. We didn't even look at the stats of the school. We went around the school, we liked the feel of it, we liked the people, and we've been proven to have made the right choice because we've met some gorgeous people through it.
Thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting. Couldn't agree more. Languages are very useful and important. I myself speak 3. And to be honest with you, when I moved to the UK 15 years ago, probably they were the setting stone for many things that I've done here in the UK. So it's definitely very important if there's a possibility to learn an additional language, even though English is spoken mostly around the world. I think it can break some barriers and make some good connections and friendships.
Well,
um,
it's actually forcing us, Matt, to learn Portuguese now. So we have lessons twice a week with our Portuguese teacher independently, Sarah and I independently, and we have to learn the language because we're not going to know what they're talking about. They could conspire against us and we wouldn't have a clue.
oh
So
yes, oh
we need to
yes,
brush up on our Portuguese. Restaurant Portuguese is no longer good enough. We need to learn, day-to-day Portuguese. Yeah.
yeah. Funnily enough, my best friend that I met, the first person I met here in the UK at university, is from Portugal, and yeah, I've been in Portugal and really loved it there. It's an
It's
amazing
lovely.
place.
Lovely, lovely people, and fantastic climate, great food. Yeah, there's a lot to love about it.
Yeah. Okay, so what is, in your opinion, everyone has different view on that question, but the key to fulfilling and successful life? talking about you're at the moment, or maybe if you could fast forward to the future and give some examples what people would normally say when they're older and say, okay, I regret doing this maybe, or this is not fulfilling actually. And do you have any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I think the the first thought that comes to mind is, how do we define success? How do we define a successful life? And I think and I'm asked that question a lot, and I do go out into the future and I think about all the people that I've known and that have lost. You know, they've gone, they're no longer with us. Um, Not one of them has regrets around time spent working, or time spent arguing, or battles that they've won with the neighbour. You know, arguing over the cat coming in the garden. No, nobody talks about that stuff. Nobody sweats the small stuff that we tend to do in life. Um, the reflection is, have I been happy or not? Have I had a happy life? And that generally also includes family. You know, to have family members that you have loved and traveled the journey with, and being a good person. Have I been kind to people? I think those are the questions that we ask ourselves when we're in our twilight years. You know, getting ready to leave this life is those three things. You know, have I contributed? Have I made a contribution? Have I made a difference? And have I been kind? I think are the three things that, for me, seem to make sense. And when we say contribution, it's how have you contributed to your family, to your community, and to and to the world. You know, have you opened doors for people that are carrying bags? Have you helped somebody that's dropped something? Have you given somebody some money that you know couldn't pay for the goods at the checkpoint, the cash out? You know, have you done those things? Have you travelled well and allowed others to travel well? That's contribution. What have you left behind is, you know, what's your legacy? What will you be remembered for? Everyone will have a legacy, just might not be a legacy that they want. So, what will you be remembered for? And I think for anyone that's listening, if you're kind of like, well, I don't know what happiness looks like for me, maybe that's a good place to start is, okay, when I'm no longer here, what do I want to be remembered for? Because that will give you a key into what happiness means for you. And you know, if it's anything remotely negative, then that's not going to make you happy. So I think that will allow people to see for themselves, what is a life well lived. What do I want to be remembered for at the end of it all?
And do you think we can alter our minds where we don't regret those things down the line, but in a way work towards right now towards those things that make us a better person without regrets? Or are we destined to make mistakes, get older and wiser as we age, and that's just how things gonna work down the line? Or do you think we could kind of alter things? Like artificial intelligence exists today and probably gonna
Yeah.
take a lot of responsibilities from many people. Could we as an individuals be altered to be better in life in general, early age, early stages, or is that something that's not possible?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think first and foremost, we are all going to make mistakes, and welcome them, because it's only a mistake if you don't learn from it. If you learn from it, then it's a lesson. So I really encourage, on a daily basis, to have lessons. And when when a curveball is sent to somebody, um, you know, I had a curveball 10 years ago. Actually, I had a kidney that had cancer inside of it, so I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. And at the time, it seemed like a huge curveball, but my initial reaction was, what can I learn from this? And therefore, if we make a mistake, we do something that and we mess up, is to, rather than dwell on the mistake, is to say, okay, what can I learn? What have I learned from that? Because that's then it becomes useful. And so that would be the first thing I think to consider. Interestingly, once we get learnings from a mistake, it changes the way the mistake felt. It gives us information. So if we've done something to somebody and we've been unkind to them, rather than kind of getting on our high horse and protecting ourselves and getting climb into a narrative that builds up our story, is just to go, that if that had been done to me, that would not be cool. So what have I learned from it? And in the learning might be an apology. I need to apologize to that person. I was bang out of line. That was really rude of me, or I was unkind. And therefore we're growing as individuals. We're going out of our comfort zone, and we are evolving. So I think even that in itself rewires that no longer was a mistake. It no longer was something we did wrong. It now is a learning, and that's a powerful piece. So that by the time we get into our twilight years, we're looking back and there's very few regrets, because the regrets have been turned into a lesson that we've now acted on. We've been able to have a narrative around that and free ourselves from it. And I'm actually working with clients at the moment that are, a couple of them are late 60s, mid 70s, and they are working on that. You know, what I've got some regrets that I are paining me and taking up my neurology. What can I do about it? If the person's still alive, then there's something we can do about it, that they hurt or that they upset. If the person is not alive, then there's a process that we can run around that. So the answer is yes, absolutely. There are ways that everybody can make things feel very different, and mistakes are a welcome gift. Now, if you make a mistake and you don't learn from it, and then you make the same mistake again and you don't learn from it, that's a mistake, because we're not learning from it. And we need to have a word with ourselves and go, right, am I stubborn? Am I just not opening up my mind to this? Am I too proud or too egotistical? Even that in itself is great feedback. Because if the person can admit, yeah, I've actually got an ego, then we need to work on becoming egoless.
Normally, people change or do something drastically if something happened to them, like a shock, breakup, loss of an individual or close family member or friend, etc. Something that had really impacted them in an extreme way. As you said, taking them out of a comfort zone, and then that's when most people start to think about these events and maybe alter things and learn from those mistakes. What's your call on this theory that there used to be, or there are still tribes where they have an elder, and that one individual made all the mistakes, absorbed all the knowledge for the entire tribe, and the only job of that person is to teach and pass on the knowledge and experience. And normally, yes, we can absorb knowledge from different sources because we live in a digital age. But what if we would have an authority or elder or wiser person that would be put in front of us so we don't do these mistakes and can speed up things and prevent aging before we reach that knowledge in a way? Don't you think the society could do something better, that we interact with elder people? Because mostly, and I'm tapping it because I had this conversation on a previous interview, but just wanted to see how other people think about this, that we might be introduced to elder people in a way of healing us and preparing us for life besides the educational system, because older people are being pushed into retirement homes and younger people don't have the attention span or patience anymore to spend with those people. Should we create like a society or a tribe in the Western society where we would kind of help each other and pass on their wisdom and knowledge and the mistakes, so it would prevent and make us a better culture in a way, or society? It's wishful thinking, but I'm throwing out ideas here just so I can hear someone else's thoughts on that topic.
I think I think that would be a fantastic idea to have. The elder place to go. I'm going to go and have a word with my elder. That would be a wonderful way for people to be able to navigate life with somebody else's wisdom and teachings that is completely agenda free. They're not clinging to the outcome. They're just there to give them the advice and narration. around that. And I think at the moment that only comes in ways of podcasts like we're doing now, or reading books, or there's a lot of it. It's all digital, but it's all a bit faceless, and we don't really know who anybody is. I think it would be a wonderful thing to have in each country. These elders that are gifting their time, that are old sages really, and can just share their wisdom on a particular problem, or a topic that people can glean their own message from. Because everybody's situation is going to be different. We know that there's intricacies around it. However, the advice could be, hopefully, would be so generic they'd be able to make it fit for their purpose and be able to act on that. I think it takes a certain person to do that, though. I think there's a certain gun-ho-ness in the world at the moment, where things are handled really quickly and speedily, and therefore mistakes happen quicker and faster. It's just, can we learn from them at the same rate? But I love your idea. Let me know if any other people want to do this, and we could maybe get a community of sages together.
Okay, I hold you up to it. So definitely I will reach out if I have a group of people that will want to do it. Okay. And what's a piece of advice you've received that stuck with you throughout your life, and why?
I've kind of alluded to this before, so it's something that I've heard from an old wisdom-filled person that I've definitely integrated in my life, and it was actually from my dad. And my dad always used to say to us, I don't remember not hearing him say this. So, from being a young child, he always used to say, "If you can be anything, Amanda, anything at all, be kind." And it was always said in that way: if you can be anything, Amanda, anything at all, be kind. And he might witness me, tormenting my brother, who was 2 years younger than me, teasing him, and he'd just say it in exactly, Amanda, if you can be anything, anything at all, be kind. And it's really stuck with me because of I don't need to tell you listeners what being kind gives people. It's just a really easy place to start. And it filters down into everyday situations. I talked about, do you help the old lady across the road? Do you open the door behind you to let somebody through that's got their hands full? When you're looking for kindness, it's quite interesting because you see a lot of it, but you equally see when it's not there. And I particularly like being kind when people have been unkind, because what I think that does is it just shines a light for them that there's another way of doing this. Not in a let me show you. It's just maybe running ahead and opening the door for them, that kind of thing, so they can see there's a different way of doing this. So that's the best piece of advice I've been given. A lot of advice, but that would be the best piece I've been given.
And what piece of advice would you give then? The one that you received, but what piece of advice would you give to younger generation? Any kind of wisdom apart from what you received or experienced in your entire life? Is there any pieces you could put together and say, okay, there you go, this is it, follow it?
Yeah. My advice to young people, or anybody actually listening, is that you are enough exactly as you are. You are enough. You were when you were born, you were programmed with all the right apps. Everything was downloaded and programmed for a life of health and happiness. And then what's happened is, as you've grown, a few of those apps might have gone a little bit glitchy because of experiences, because of trauma, which you spoke about earlier, Matt, because of heartache. And yet underneath it all, know that you are enough just as you are, and you're far more than you ever think you are. You are an absolute genius. Your neurology is incredible. While you've been listening to this podcast, your neurology has created 100,000 neural networks available for you to use, and you're probably even unaware that happened. So we don't know what we don't know. And the more I look in and research and read about neurology, the more I don't know, because the brain's evolving all the time. So we're never going to say we're done, we understand the human brain. We're never going to say that, because as we understand it, it evolves even further. So my advice would be, you're enough exactly as you are, and you're so much more than you ever think you are.
Thank you very much. One last question about dealing with difficult situations throughout life. What advice could you give to younger people? I We tapped on numerous bits and bobs here, but considering the anxiety level, especially in today's world, and we did tap into that. What could younger people, especially dealing with different environments, in particular maybe social media environment that you said through your stories could have an impact on individuals because of cyberbullying and being anonymous, how could they cope if they don't have an immediate support around them? Maybe put them into a process where they can do these steps to fuse the brain to kind of build a wall and say, okay, for the time being, I'm going to take these steps and then I'm going to reach out to someone else who is much stronger or knowledgeable in that area. Do you have any like bullets to shoot and equip others?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's actually something that Rebecca Cousins, who I mentioned earlier, the kids and teens coach based in the UK, she developed this process. And she spoke recently at the Kent Wellness Festival about this process. So it's something that is really simple and really effective. And we know it's effective because she's been using it with clients. And essentially, the first thing to understand is if you're being bullied, whether it's cyberbullying or face-to-face bullying, actually the person's in the space, is actually it's more about the bully than it is about them. The bully is bullying them because of the bully's insecurities. So the bully is lacking self-confidence, self-esteem, things lacking in that person that makes them want to attack another person. And specifically, whatever it is they attack them on is what the bully actually is lacking. So that's the first thing to notice, is that anyone that bullies is coming from a place of lack of confidence. The second thing is to encourage the person to get a piece of A4 and pop it so it's landscape. And then in black writing, right at the very bottom, just write some of the words that the bully has said about them, whatever that is. And then I want them to think of between 4 to 6 people that know them really, really well. And maybe a best friend, maybe a family member, maybe a sibling, and write down so if we pick one person first, we use a specific color of red, and then we move to the second person and we'll use a different color. It's called the rainbow process. Use different colored pen for each of these 4 to 6 people. And the question is the same. What would this person say about me? They love me, they know me. What would they say about me? And they write down the words that person would use to describe them. So in the end, they end up with these 4 to 6 rainbow colors of words that the person that knows them really well would say about them. What that does then is it allows the person that's being bullied to get a really good perspective on the bullier. Because now we've got 4 to 6 people that know that person that's being bullied really well, and they look at those words and they read them out loud, and then they look at the words that the bully has said, and it just literally obliterates it, because who knows them best? Not the bully. The bully is only projecting what's actually going on for them. And yet there's all this other stuff that's magical and beautiful that's recognized about that person. So it's called the rainbow process. It's very effective. It's important that the bully's words are written in small black text at the bottom, and then the other 4 to 6 people are written, almost like a rainbow, if you like, over the bully words. And then the parting thing, if Rebecca's doing it with a client, says, "Who knows you best? These people or this bully?" And the child or the teenager or the young adult always says, "Well, these people know me best. The bully doesn't know me at all." And then there's a last step, and that is just show kindness to the bully, because actually all the things that they're saying you are is what they're feeling, and they don't have any of this that you've got. So you don't have to befriend them, just show them kindness, even if it's just kindness from your heart, because the child ends up feeling quite sorry for the bully once they get a perspective on it. So that's a process that's absolutely solidified. It works really, really well. It's very simple to do. And anybody can. You don't have to be a child or a teenager. You can be, 56 years old and feel as though you're being bullied, and run the same process. It's very powerful.
Wonderful advice. Thank you very much for sharing this. One last question. If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would that be? Or is there anything, or you can answer one or the other question. You can decide which one you want to answer. If you could go back in time and do things differently, would you do or alter anything in the past? Or are you quite satisfied and happy how things evolved? And you think if you were to alter your younger self, then you wouldn't be here where you are today?
Yeah, I think to answer the latter question, I wouldn't change my outcome. I mentioned that when I didn't get to university, I was devastated, but now I see the journey I've come on. I'm really pleased that I didn't go to university and go into teaching. Not, I love teaching. I teach in a different way, but I think teachers do an amazing job. I just think for me that would have probably been the wrong choice. So the universe came and intervened, even though I couldn't see it at the time. But there's one thing I would change if I could go back in time, and that would be to say to Mrs. Lepic, who was the deputy head teacher that told me in front of all the other children, there were 12 of us sat round a dining table on my first day at senior school at Holy Trinity School. And she went round the table and she asked all of us what we wanted to be. And when she got to me, I said I wanted to be a vet. And she said, "You could never be a vet because you're not clever enough. Nobody at this school would end up with those kind of grades." I wish I had have said to her, "I don't think you can tell me what I'm capable of. Nobody knows what I'm capable of. Nobody knows what any of us are capable of. And I don't think it's right as a teacher to tell somebody they're not clever enough to be able to do whatever it is that they want to do." But at 11, I didn't have that wisdom. I just wonder how many other children she said things like that too, and they believed her as well. So that would be the only thing that I wished I could have changed, specifically with Mrs. Lepic. But in many respects, I have changed it because in my book that came out in November called Knowing You, I delve into limiting beliefs and what holds people back, and allow them to see that actually that can be changed. So I've addressed it in many respects. However, I think Mrs. Lepic probably would have really benefited from a more adult chat. Maybe if I'd have gone back with that when I was 18 and, leaving the sixth form, and had a chat with her, because it stuck with me a very long time and I believed her. And that's the thing. So that's probably why when you were asking about younger generation, it's you're so much more than you think you are. You are capable of doing so much more, because we all are. Just don't let other people's scripts and limitations land on you, and start believing them.
Yeah. I think COVID, in a way, had a positive impact on the world. I mean, unfortunately, many people were sick or died of it, but in the perspective of enabling people to work remotely for those who could, in a way, open many people's eyes what they are capable of or what they could do and change in their life. So referring back to
Mm,
your story, a teacher altered your mind and said you're not capable of doing this, demoralized you in a way and said, no, you're not gonna be that person that you want to become. And then when COVID started, people actually seen the world wider behind the walls of their work environment, office spaces, etc., and said, okay, we can be happy. We can be happy having a lot of money, or we can do actually jobs that we finding fulfilling and having the balance of not necessarily working 9 to 5 in an office, commute, waste time in the tube, on in the traffic, etc. So
yeah.
it opened many people's eyes, and hopefully we can even delve further in that generation of youngsters now that are out there and trying to have an impact on many topics that are currently out in the air. Hopefully they can have a positive impact, and we won't have to face any more individuals that would basically tell us we're not capable of doing things, and we
Mm,
can have a better world in general. That would be wonderful, but let's see what the future holds for us.
exactly. Exactly, Matt. Yeah.
All right. Amanda, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, sharing all these stories and lessons. The interview is packed with interesting things. Definitely something that can equip the younger people moving forward and getting ready for their future and life in general. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to
You're
talk to you.
welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure, Matt. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.